Should we start, sir? Should we proceed?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Mr. Panda and
Yeah.
Mr. T.S. Babu, are you guys there?
Yeah.
Sir?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Then
Yeah.
we'll start, sir. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on redesigning HR for COVID-19. I hope you all are safe and healthy. I am Dr. Smaraki Patnaik, Assistant Professor, ASBM University, and I'm really excited to be hosting this session today. I am pleased to introduce you to the eminent speakers for this session. First, we have with us Mr. Emmanuel David, Director, Tata Management Training Center, the capability building arm of the Tata Group. He has over 3 decades of experience in sectors like automobile, infrastructure, highly accomplished stints in Voltas Limited, British Gas, GMR Group, Honda, Volvo, etc. His experience is complemented by certifications in coaching, sustainability, leadership, corporate governance, and profitability management. We welcome you, sir. We also have with us the Senior Vice President and HR Head of India Power, Mr. Prakash Chandra Panda. He has over 29 years of rich corporate experience in the entire gamut of HR and has been associated with large multinational giants and Indian companies in telecom, retail, and manufacturing sectors, and also worked across geographies. He has been associated with Bharti Airtel, Reliance Communication, Pantaloons Retail, SR Group, etc. We welcome you, sir. Last but
Thank
not
you.
the least, we welcome Mr. T.S. Babu, who is one of the top HR leaders and has rendered over 3 decades of highly accomplished stints in the manufacturing projects, IT, and ITES sectors. Having started his career with BHEL, he has had several impact SPI Tech, Manila, etc. He is presently Senior Vice President at Biopharmaceuticals Pharmaceuticals and is responsible for human capital and organizational transformation. We are really fortunate and elated to have such eminent speakers today. I again welcome you all, sir. We had also TS Alloys Limited. However, due to some exigency, he couldn't join us. Just a little housekeeping before we start. I would request all the participants to kindly keep their video and audio off throughout the session in order to avoid any kind of disruption or disturbance. Secondly, we would want the session to be participative and hence we would love to hear from our participants. So if you have any queries or questions during the session, we would request you to send them to us through the chat box. And if you have a particular question to a particular panel member, you can please name them also. By any chance, if we fail to get to your question, we will also try to follow up. Thank you. The survey conducted by professional services firm EY, which incorporates first-hand perspective of human resource heads of over 100 organizations across sectors in India on the impact of COVID-19 showed that while the COVID-19 impact can be felt by organizations across sectors, 72% of the organizations stated that its impact will be felt even after 6 months. Today, organizations are grappling with an unprecedented crisis that is fundamentally different from what they have ever experienced. In this hour of crisis, the HR function has to be a business partner in anticipating change, co-creating a range of scenarios, and also plan for the future. It is all priorities, focus towards managing remote workforce, digitalize the HR function, and reimagine workforce models. Hence, the topic of the webinar today, redesigning HR for COVID-19, is quite pertinent looking at the current scenario. and our esteemed panelists will be better able to throw light on the different aspects of HR that we need to revisit and also redesign. Moving forward, my first question is to Mr. Panda. Sir, the crisis now is forcing organizations to re-look at the HR processes and operations through a digital lens. The initial priorities of IT infrastructure, the basic communication and operation support are now fading into the background as the new priorities emerge. Further, I believe one of the most impacted processes will be the talent acquisition or the talent sourcing. The way I look at it is from a medium term perspective, organizations might just concentrate or need to focus on business continuity and also smarter ways of delivering work. However, if we look at it from a long term perspective, I think role profiling and workforce organization. How do you see it, sir, in terms of HR systems, processes, and domain of talent sourcing? Please, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Samadaki, and good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Mr. Emmanuel David, Mr. T.S. Babu, and all the participants. When I talk about redesigning the HR for COVID 2019, we have to look at various perspectives. COVID is a global pandemic, and it's leading to economic crisis, social crisis, and medical emergencies, all three together. And what the new normal today is basically zero touch, work from home, social distancing, and caring is, sharing is not exactly caring nowadays, unfortunately. And therefore, how do we as a HR professional turn this crisis into an opportunity is something the industry leaders will look forward for. So if you look at the opportunity, I look it as an opportunity. Organizations.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Your
Yeah.
video is off. Kindly.
No, video is on.
So we can't see you, sir.
Am I?
You're
Hello.
audible to me.
You're perfectly visible. You're perfectly visible, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
sir.
We can see you very
Yeah. Yeah, just I'll tell you, so when you look at a HR strategy, the first thing, obviously, you have to look at the organizations when they're looking at this crisis, they will look for a cost reduction. And when it comes to cost, they will look at, reduction of the manpower, reduction of the salary and all these things. But that is not a, advisable things, because anything that you are doing for the people, it's an investment. So therefore, you have to look at the final aspect, what is a good cost, what is a bad cost. And the bad cost maybe, or those who are non-essential things can be reduced. The second aspect is you look at investment and the expenditure. The third aspect is obviously zero investment approach, zero investment improvement, or zero cost solution. Just to give some example of this, that can be a need of the hour. Look at in Odia you call it macho telore macho bhaja, or in Bengali you call it machar tele mach bhaja. That means you are spending less and getting better. So whatever you do is a zero cost solution or maybe a low cost improvement, so that the organizational is efficiently managed and the productivity is higher, so that that is one. The second part also, if you look at a lot of professors who are there will be sharing case studies as to how do you deal with such situation. But mind you, this kind of pandemic last 100 years nobody has witnessed, so a lot of case study will not be there. So you have to have a lot of scenario planning. So number one is, what is the best class scenario, what is the moderate scenario, and what could be the worst class scenario. What is the best class scenario is, it's a win-win for the employees as well as for the organization. What is the moderate is win some and lose some, so that both of them are partnering together. And worst class we should not think of right now, because there is a lot of survival and revival strategy which can be always looked into. And the second aspect is those organizations which has preparedness for this kind of crisis. They have some readiness level for moving from a physical workplace to a digital workplace. They are definitely doing well and they are able to sustain. So HR sustainability will be very high if the preparedness at the HR level is good and organization readiness also is good. If you look at some of the things that one has to look at from a talent acquisition perspective, a lot of company will be thinking that right now should I invest on the hiring of the people. But I'll tell you, this is a good time to look at attracting a lot of good talent, and also make sure that how do you have a very agile and innovative organization. And therefore you have to make sure that every single people in the organization, or every single people who are hired from the organization are they tech savvy and they are people savvy. Tech savvy means they are embracing the technology. Those set of people who are successful adding value physically as well as digitally will be welcome, and they will be the talented bunch of people. They will have a great future in the organization. At the same time, there are some people who may be mediocre. They are ready to work in the workplace in a physical mode, but not readiness level is not in a digital mode. They need to reskill themselves and little bit so that they are redeployed and they are employment opportunity also there within the organization, outside the organization. So these are some of the things organization need to focus from a hiring perspective. But when I look at what is going to change is a digital space. Right now, the physical interviews will not be there. A lot of video interviews, a lot of audio interviews will be there. The second aspect is whenever organizations are hiring, they will look for the current role as well as any prospective or future roles. So that means every single person who will be hired for the organizations will be looked at these two aspects. Third is the young talent they will be always looking at, because the agility will be there. The young talent can work for 12 hours, 14 hours, both in a physical space in the as well as in the work from home concept, and they will be more successful. So I think the age of the employee average, definitely it will also come down. And a lot of people who are actually readiness level, they are only for physical. Obviously, they also need to reskill themselves and look at for some of the new skills training or some of the newer job opportunity within and outside the organization. They will to look for. One more aspect also is on the hiring philosophy. Obviously, they will look at a cultural fit. Means culturally, a lot of IT companies are readiness is very high from for work from home. But right now, culturally, they will look at that whether these guys can also have a cultural fit, role fit, skill fit. These three angles they will look into, and there will be no compromise on the hiring quality. That's for sure. That means all talented people only will get opportunity. Not that everybody might get opportunity. That's the hiring strategy. When you look at some of the organizational structural perspective, the structure will be more flexible, and the structure will be basically it is a leader versus team member, leader and team members, not much of hierarchy. Because when you look at HR processes, a lot of process simplification will be done. In a physical workplace, what happens is a lot of bureaucracy will be there at times, because physical distraction also there. People will do a lot kind of interaction. But in the absence of that, digitization definitely help improving the productivity. Therefore, structurally, it will be a very less hierarchy structure. And secondly, it will be a boundaryless structure. For example, today in the physical, bosses are there, boundaries there, offices are there. In a digital, you don't have boss; he's sitting somewhere else, and it will be a customer-facing structure than a boss-facing structure. So obviously, people need to adapt immediately. How do you work in this particular space? The next aspect will be the agility and innovation in the structural perspective. How you can have a very flexible structure. So as and when required, you can redeploy people within the organization, make the job enrichment, and leadership level you may hire less, and entry level you can hire more, so that you can always have cost efficiency from a structural perspective. On the employment norms, I think couple of things will come, which will going to be a new normal is double employment. It was so far restricted. Multiple employment. Contextual employment. So various options, and maybe HR professional need to learn it from the industry as well as from the medical profession as to how doctors are working as a full-time, part-time, their own businesses, so that not only that they are practitioner, but they also are actually having a cost efficiency in the organization. That will be from the employment norms perspective. Whenever it comes to the performance management policy related thing, strategy will be little different. Obviously, the pay for performance culture has to be built in any organization, so that productivity improvement is always the it is constant. But second aspect will be market driven salary and competitive salary. It will be, I think, it will be very difficult. Many companies will not be able to afford. So therefore, the employee expectation also has to be little low right now, and that people may not get. At the same time, the mediocre people, they will have a lot of issues. Many companies will come out with a stagnation policy, wherein people who are not able to add much value, and people whose engagement level are not very high, they might struggle to even get the increment or any other benefits. So those guys will be stagnated in terms of role and in terms of the salary. So this is definitely going to be an area wherein the right cost resource, high cost resource can become a right cost resource. The organization will look for the stagnation policy to make it a very agile organization, and also making it cost efficiency. Similarly, if you look at one thing is that yes, people who are professionally qualified, mostly the engineers, MBAs, and various other professionals, they will be definitely they will have a good opportunity, because young population today, they are tech savvy, they are embracing the technology. So many companies will always welcome them to the organization, and they will have a strategy. And possibly it might happen that the industry institute interface will be go one step forward, wherein the engagement will be maybe before joining the students may be industry ready. So therefore a lot of such interaction might happen, because digitally that's a more positive things, because physically the travel also is a restriction was also there. So these are some of the things that is there. And if I tell you something which Dr. Smarik is talk about, that many companies are grappling, they are struggling, they are crisis ridden, and thankfully I'll tell you that what we need to do as a HR strategist is basically how do you convert this as an opportunity, and how do you thankfully I'm in a power sector, so power utility sector is because you have got a distribution setup also, we're less impacted. So therefore one strategy come out immediately when we are moved from a physical to digital, because your readiness level is not high with a traditional organization. But we set quite powerful approach. One is no hardship to any of the employees. So that means job is intact. We are not going to throw even if inefficiency. Like last 2 years, we are prepared for this. Some of the people are not doing well. Obviously, we had a planned exit for them, so that today the budget is much better than whatever 2 years back. The second aspect is the hardship will not give right now. No salary cut. That means people will not give a hardship during this time when there is a pandemic and they are already anyway struggling socially, medically, and a lot of emotional issues are there. The third thing we did is constant communication. That yes, I think we as an organization are there to support you. The fourth thing is engagement, and the really not only the reporting managers are engaging with the team and also getting the best out of them in terms of the productivity. Both business continuity and functional deliverables are ensured. But the other aspect is HR also. We are reaching out to every single employee, giving them understanding their issues, challenges, and we are also saying that safety is important. So nobody is forced to go to the work; it is voluntary. People are coming voluntarily, but yes, in the field operation, we are giving them the all precautions so that they are actually attending the customers' complaints, so that the productivity also is there and also business continuity is there. And most important aspect is this is the time we come out of a bouquet of engagement and development initiative called Limitless Horizons, and we will give a experiential learning mode. We are reaching out to every single employee of the organization, right from the leadership to middle management to junior management to workman level, and having experiential learning. So this is the time. One big advantage with this is in a physical. Today, look at this. We started the webinar right at 3 o'clock, because everybody was planned. If it is a physical place, there is traffic jam, people are not able to reach on time, it takes time, 100% people may not be available. In digital, that is also one possibility. So that we are encouraging this, and therefore we are able to make the organization productivity very high, and employee excitement is always there across the organization. That's a good thing that we have done, we as an organization. And finally, I'd also like to touch upon 2-3 aspects as my concluding remark is, I think there are 3 things. One is obviously, if you look at HR as a profit center, if you having this concept, HR will no more be seen as a cost center, and that means the HR leadership team need to work on how to give services in terms of the training, in terms of the compliances, payroll services, the way some of the institutes also they do some kind of external revenue model. Those things can be done by the HR fraternity, so that HR will be treated as a profit center, and not a single person in the HR will have any kind of threat on the job or in terms of any compensation, and they will continue to add value in the organization, build credibility in the organization, and as a profession, it will be always be seen as a business partner, and the HR contribution will lead to the business results. The second aspect is on the employee engagement side. I think yes, the engagement leading to the satisfaction, leading to commitment leading to higher engagement, engagement leading to better business result. I think this both physically and digitally, each and every organization need to look at. And third aspect is, I think we need to learn from the banking sector one thing, which might possible as a HR professional, as HR enthusiast, will be very happy that in a banking sector today, we call it customer anywhere, banking everywhere. So there will be a time, both physically and digitally. Employee anywhere, HR everywhere. If that is done, HR's credibility will be very high, the validation is very high, and HR fraternity will be always the one community. There will be no threat, and they will be always seen as a person during the crisis, a go-to man, or go to a team from an organization perspective. I think with this thought, I thank ASBM and Dr. Samariki for giving me the opportunity. In case anything that anybody wants to know, maybe during the Q&A session, I will love to share my insight and thoughts again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for such a lucid presentation. What I take from your talk is an organization to sustain such challenges have to be agile and innovative, and the digital space has to be, reinvented and redesigned. Thank you, sir. An important dimension that organizations will have to consider is the psychological impact of the crisis on their employees, and also the stress and the anxiety that employees are facing given the uncertainty surrounding the system. How can organizations revamp the traditional employee engagement ways? I would request Mr. T.S. Babu to please share some guiding principles to follow during these tough times when it comes to employee engagement. Please, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Smariki, and thank you, ASBM, for giving me this opportunity. We have a very limited slot, but I'll try to cover as much as I can. Okay, employee engagement, as gentlemen, ladies, as you all know, it's about something like, you have some of the IT and ITES companies have a celebration on Friday evening, and they call it, thank God it's a Friday, because they had enough of a hell for the 5 days, and so they want to celebrate now. And there are other organizations where during a weekend, a highly engaged employee on a Friday afternoon gets really crazy, because what happens to him, he can't just wait for the next 2 days to get back into action. That's an engaged employee. All right, so that's about it. And you would have heard about this maxim, this saying that people join organizations, but they quit the managers. Okay, so there would be a great name, great brand value, all of that. So which is why somebody joins an organization. But then what really happens is, because of the experience he gets from the team leader, he ultimately quits the job. So, Gallup about 20 years back, they came up with this insight, and they revealed that globally, only 20% of the workforce is engaged and the rest are not, which actually, after the scientific management of Frederick Winslow Taylor, where he's shown us great ways to improve productivity and quality. This was a huge opportunity 20 years back when Gallup said it's only 20% engaged. Why don't you get the best of your people? Which means it's higher revenues, higher profits, higher GDPs, and a lot of global progress would have happened. All of that, but not much has been leveraged. All right, so I'll come back to you on what really should a team leader do to have his people engaged. One of the things is that when this engagement insight kind of thing had come, I had seen that in the IT industry, slowly they started having some employee engagement budgets. So what they do is they do some celebrations, parties, some fun activity and all of that. So that really doesn't happen. I worked in ITES myself. When my employee relation executive or a manager would get into a team and say, okay, we're going to have a split level meeting. We're going to have this fun Friday, all of that. The operation guy would say, hey, no, I have targets to deliver. Not this week, maybe next week. So this is not a very, very integrated approach. So what really happens is, if you have a CEO in an organization, whereas on his dashboard, the first 3 priorities are: number 1, profits; number 2, how he's going to take care of his customers; and number 3 is sales or revenues. Okay, if that is a priority, I tell you guys, this organization is not going to be engaged. You're going to not have any engaged workforce at all. Inversely, if this CEO on the number 1 slot of his dashboard has, I'm going to have people with a purpose, and my people are going to take care of the customers, and sales and revenues will automatically happen. So that's the order that has to be. All right. So otherwise, what happens is, let me tell you from experience, we have done some great Gallup surveys, and we do some interventions. We go to the line managers or project managers and say, hey, guy, your engagement score is just about 55. You got to do an incremental 10%, which means you're not doing any coaching, you're not doing this. So we try all of that. Piecemeal stuff doesn't happen. And, so therefore, the point is, if you look at, some, the big people in the management theories, leadership theories and all that, they say that there are different shades and different types of leadership. And recently there was a webinar about compassionate leadership. You just can't have different shades of leadership. If and he says that, Stephen Covey, he also says that leadership is a matter of choice. If you want to be, you can be a leader and work like a leader, or you could even work like a manager and still deliver your numbers. Let me tell you guys, let me ask you this. If I am father of 2 daughters, do I have a choice to take care of the children or not to take care? If there is a prime minister of this country, does he have a choice to which state he should develop, which he should not develop, how many days of lockdown should be there or not there? It's purely on merit. You are responsible for a certain outcome. You're responsible for people, so you got to be. If organizations have to be engaged, and much more now during the post-COVID times, because your teams are going to get disintegrated, they're going to work remotely. Even when they were together, the bosses used to go to each of the employees, just check whether he's had a long telephone call from another employer, or is he there? How is his mood? Is he going to leave? Is it me? Kind of apprehensions. And now you got guys working from home. So what is that kind of a control you're going to have? It has to be love and purpose. 2 things: purpose for business and love. When I say love, all your shades, your compassion, your amiability, your equanimity, being fair, and trusting environment, all of that comes within that. There's no choice. So if the CEO takes this up as this is my top priority, then that's the only way it's going to cascade down. Now, let me also tell you this. The HR function, actually, it's a little fractured. Everything, we have a lot of these tools and practices, but one tool doesn't talk to the other one. So the performance management tool doesn't talk to the engagement survey. The engagement survey tool doesn't talk to the 360 degree. The 360 degree doesn't talk to the leadership assessment. And, most of these things are in concepts. Your recognition policy, your reward, principles, diversity, inclusion, each one is a silo. They don't talk to each other. This is one area that needs to be integrated, across the function. And there got to be a proper responsibility and accountability matrix of this. What happens right now is, in this confused state, okay, there's got to be engagement, that's okay, but my numbers are important. So the poor HR fellow, is he the guy to take up this engagement thing? Because the team leaders, they're the ones, right? Because they have the team members reporting into them. They're the ones who should engage the team. They got to develop them. They got to coach them, all of that. So why is HR fellow, going to a team leader with a scorecard? So these kind of, realignment and, the architecture and all of this has to be redesigned properly. It has to flow from the top. The CEO has to believe it's not some fun that the HR is doing with this employee relations or employee engagement, all of that. This is serious business, loving your people. So if you take people, everything else will fall in place. That's what I've been telling you. So what is it that the team leaders got to do now? What they have to do, the first thing is that you have your JDs and you have organization charts. I would say just bury them. Because you got some people in place of a particular JD, but this fellow is, because nobody is made exactly with the whole set of competencies. Even God doesn't make people. So you got some guy, he may be strong in certain areas. So figure out those strengths. He design his role. Let him do what he does best and let him do more of it. And then you got somebody else. So if you just rejig the organization, your net productivity is going to really go up. And people love to do what they love most. Otherwise, they're going to switch off. Only the limbs and eyes will do some activity, and they would have left, once the time is over, and they quit the place. That's how it happens. So first of all, identify strengths. And that's the way you're going to build a strength-based organization. An organization has to be strength-based. All of us, by psychology, we are all weakness-focused. You got a child who gets 90 in maths, but he gets 50 in say science, and your first reaction when you get the progress card is, okay, why did you get so less in science? Well, that's design. He's very strong there in maths. So what I'm coming back now is that the whole L&D philosophy, the L&D ideology of working on the deficits again has got to be. What we do is we try to assess some competency gaps and we try to work on those, some L&D programs on the gaps. No, that's not going to help. A weakness cannot be converted into a strength. A weakness can maximum be neutralized or not a weakness. You can't make it a strength. Just can't make it a strength. So the newest thinking in the HR is that you have to figure out wherever your spikes are, wherever you're best, and try to leverage on that. Even the L&D has to be based on this. Otherwise, if you look at ROI, net on net, you're not going to get anything out of these trainings on the deficits. There's one other theory that's come up that, what it says is that you can't really assess the competency of somebody. How good somebody is in business acumen or strategic thinking. That's not something you can do. If you're assessing, it's your assessment. It's not somebody else's. There's research of Harvard on this, the last 2019, and people are working on that. So, which is why a lot of these companies, the Adobe, Accenture, Amazon, and Deloitte, and all of these guys they just shut out their performance management practice. They just shut out. They said, okay, no more of this. Just wasting four months of business time. Then what you get out of it is very counterproductive. Nobody accepts what is the outcome of that. So these are the things that are happening. So at every team leader, once he identifies the strengths, just be focused on the strengths. In performance appraisal meetings, what happens is 10% is on the strengths or the successes and 90% is on the deficits and weaknesses and all of that. Nothing is going to happen except putting the 12 down. The research says is that nobody wants feedback. Feedback, no feedback. Nobody likes feedback, which is why people are switching away from Facebook to Snapchat and Instagrams and all of that. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir. Sir,
Yeah.
I would kindly request you to please conclude so that we have time for the other panels also.
All right. So
Yeah.
so once you do that, so the way to go is that every team leader needs to do a check-in meeting with the team members, and try to facilitate him with whatever knowledge, resource, whatever. Hey, guy, you've done a great job. And when you have these meetings, there are two perspectives of this. One is the assessment, and the other one is acceleration. So don't focus too much on what things have not happened. Don't get into a measurement mode. Get onto the acceleration mode. In the time that you have, how best you're gonna accelerate. So everything positive. If this is the way you do, if the organization entirely believes that yes, love is an ideology that we should follow, that's a core value, whole set of values, and all the behaviors have to be aligned to that, and there of course has to be a business purpose. If these two are the drivers of any enterprise, and team leaders start doing this, and we make all those realignments of the HR silos, I think that this is the time you got to do than ever before. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mariki, for the opportunity, and thank you for the opportunity, ASBM.
Thank you, sir, for such a comprehensive yet concise address. You have very beautifully put on that example of a father who has no choice but to love his daughters unconditionally. So I believe, crisis or no crisis, each organization should give importance to employee engagement. And I am pretty sure your ideas and guidelines will give us all a fighting chance at faster recovery and eventually growth on the other side. Going forward, my question is to Mr. Emmanuel David. Sir, the recent survey by EY titled Resilience Planning, HR Resilience Planning COVID-19, Impact and Preparedness showed around 70% of the organizations believe that the single biggest concern for continued remote working is fall in productivity. What is your take on that, sir? Also, sir, as you head the capability building arm of the Tata Group, I would want you to know the role of learning and development and talent management in keeping low productivity at check. Please, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smarki. I want to compliment Dr. Biswajit Patnaik for getting us all together. And we already have two illustrious speakers, both Prakash and Mr. Babu, who have, touched on the subject of HR post-COVID quite nicely. And I think Prakash has set the stage talking about being tech savvy and people savvy. And, so that we are able to actually be available. And he also spoke how should we hire people. So now that you have them, that is one aspect. And then Mr. Babu touched on the engagement part of it. I like the fact that, if you have purpose and if CEOs, focus on, the right kind of values for people. I like the way he summed up on, there must be love as well. I think that's an amazing stage. Let me just make one or two comments, initial comments, Dr. Smarki, and then respond to you a little more fully.
Right, sir.
So first and foremost, I'm so happy that so many of us here are on this particular chat panel, on this webinar.
Right, sir.
The fact that we are all connected together, and, we have connectivity, we have laptops and all these things, we are so privileged. That
Correct,
means
sir.
we are all gifted, we are all, we are privileged people. So when we have privileges, it also puts a lot of responsibility on us. Right? Now coming down to particularly to talent management as such and drop-in productivity, that's a I don't know, EY survey, they would be fairly correct, but I must tell you that I have seen people actually put in a lot of work, and there is a lot of, people have surprised me, at least when I look at my own team members, they have surprised me with the kind of new things they've brought about. So it works both ways. I think engagement is a key factor. So let's look at the context today. When you look at talent management, what is the single most important reason for it? It is not that we want to do talent management. Talent management is the foundation for business continuity. You need to have talented people so that you can sustain your business. I think that's the key factor. What's the context? Today, world over, globally, consumption has gone down. Even a few weeks ago, we found that oil prices went down. Why? Because there's no consumption, there was no storage. Right? So when there is no consumption, production goes down. Right? And people only focus on essentials. What happens, therefore, when you focus on essentials, there are a couple of things organizations have been doing that remove waste. Next thing is to see how can we reduce costs, which is the most logical things you will say. When I spoke to my colleagues, they said, yes, we should, remove waste. We should reduce cost wherever needed. But Emmanuel, why don't we enhance value? We have a disturbance. Yeah, and so that's a key. And the key to competitiveness is to enhance value. And who are the people who will enhance value for you? These are your talent. Now the challenge is they're not in front of you. You had the comfort of looking at them earlier and then having that one-to-one connect and enabling them to actually tell them and get that buy-in. When you're looking in the person's eye, you say, will you do that? And previously, then people say, yes, sir, I'll do that. And so you felt that is the kind of, that work will be done. So that is not possible today. Let me take you back to a story of 1940. In the 1940, Hewlett Packard was just starting as a company. And, there was a lot of depression, post-war situation. And many people were actually downsizing because of that situation. Hewlett Packard itself didn't do too well. It was struggling with market share and finances and all that. But they continued to hire good quality people. And they continued to hire. And So at that time it was a small company just established, but they focused on talent. And now you know Hewlett Packard is an entity, it's a huge entity. So many years later, they asked the founders, how is it, how did you happen to hire people who are, despite your own financial situation? They said, we could not afford not to do that. Right? So friends, I want us all to understand that factor. To stay competitive, to be sustainable, and to even survive, we cannot afford not to take care of talent. I think that is a key issue, because everything else is equal. Technology is more or less equal. Everyone has the same problem today, world over, right from Afghanistan to Zanzibar. Everyone is impacted by the pandemic. So there is no change. So what is it you can do differently is your own intellect. Okay, and who can do that? It is people who can do that. Right? So let us very quickly look at the value chain of talent management. First and foremost, on identifying people. So as long as there are a lot of tools which are available, and now I'm happy that you mentioned EY, people like DDI or Conferry have created virtual assessment tools. Right? But we cannot also, all companies. Someone asked, Anuj asked, what about small industries, MSMEs? They all can't really afford. But you must think of simple ways of understanding who the talent is. And now how do we understand that? I think it starts with a very simple thing of setting clear goals. Right? Very often we do not set clear goals. We all know that very well. All of you are quite smart, you know that. And as the word smart means, goals are set in a smart way. So set that. But setting a goal is only half the job done. Give the people the right resources to do it. And today, what are the resources they need? Is there connectivity? Right? Do they have a proper laptop? Right? So those are things who are knowledge workers. And those who can come to work, ensure that what do they need? They need to have basic assurance of hygiene. Right? And how can they get simple things? As Mr. Panda also mentioned. So those things are critical. Once you identify the talent, then you have to hold them accountable, right? And if you're having virtual meetings, ask questions. Sometimes you must do it one-on-one, sometimes you have to do it collective. Then second is you deploy people, then you match the talent to the identified jobs. Your jobs also, as I said earlier, we are eliminating waste. So some things are not required in the news context. What jobs can be combined? What processes can be dropped? Please use this time of lockdown to review all these things. Only then we can, come out stronger. It's like the whole principle of gold and silver, which gets into a crucible, and it's melted. Only the pure silver comes to the top, right? So this is the time to remove the impurities in our work processes. I think that's an important aspect. So if the job is done in a design is done in a proper manner, I think we have a pretty good challenge. We have a pretty good recipe that people who have the skills are able to do that. Then we have to nurture talent, learning. So you have to define the learning outcomes and what does it require for them to reach the next level. And thankfully, there are a lot of micro learning, nano learning objects available. Most of us are on WhatsApp or on Facebook. We see a lot of videos, and those kind of things are available. You can put together that into a learning journey, enable people to, take on and acquire a skill. When I'm talking again about learning, we will not have the luxury of sitting face to face and working with our hands. So how can we use technology creatively is an opportunity in the development of people. And this is what we are also doing. My team is also working pretty hard and they've done certain things. So suppose you have to deliver a one-day program on hiring skills, right? Recently we did that for about 4 hours session. And some of my colleagues did a role play of an interview, and we had kind of, they had edited it and put it in a manner with questions in between, so that the right skill is learned by the people. So you can actually use this virtual working to a great advantage. I'll tell you, in a class, and Dr. Patnaik will bear me to it, when you sit in a physical class of about 60 people, you ask a question, at best 3 or 4 people will be allowed to answer, because you'll say, you first, you next, wait, you next. That's how it is. Today you ask a question, you put it on your screen, and you can have all 60 people respond immediately in that 2 minutes or 1 minute. Right? And they actually have 60 responses. Now it is for the facilitator to kind of work on all of them and draw an insight on it, So technology can be a great opportunity to force multiply some of the learning opportunities, right? And also, I think retention of people becomes critical. Over here, a couple of things. We spoke of engagement, and Babu was very correct. We need to connect the hearts of people. Only then they will feel like working for you. And if you do not connect, they'll get disengaged, right? Surveys, 20% disengaged. In fact, the number has gone up, and that means they're not working for you. They're working against the company, actively disengaged. You can't afford that in a pandemic situation or in a situation where demand is low, consumption is low. So what is required? Recognition. Rewards you don't have. Your hands are tied because you don't have too much happening. At best, you can say, what a great idea it is. Dr. Smaraki, great idea. Thank you so much. Social recognition plays an important part. You have LinkedIn where people do likes and stuff like that. You have badges if you have an LMS. So those are all ways we can recognize people and see that they're valued. Because you have to help them know that they're valued for their intellect and their contribution. And that's how you will be able to retain good people. Now see, just like all of us are, many people are looking for shakeouts, and most companies are struggling. And therefore, they will look for talent. And if they're disengaged, then they will go away. I'll give you a quick, small example and then stop. I was in the oil and gas sector, and some key employees were being taken up by competition. I had a discussion. I said, if these 3 people go, then they will take off the whole team with them. So the MD and I discussed, and we persuaded them to stay back. And in a few months, then we offered them a stock option scheme. And I will tell you, even today, though I'm not there, the MD is not there, those people are key people in that organization. And from one particular oil and gas, distribution zone, there are 25 of them in the country from that company today. So key people are so critical, especially when you see that they're available, someone else will take them. They're willing to pay that extra price and that premium, which will be actually to your loss. And if you pay a small incremental price, what will be about a 10% increase, 12% increase, and a word of, saying encouragement. You're such a valuable person. You've been here for 7 years. That person will stay on longer, and he won't go for the 30, 40, 50% somebody else is offering. So de-risk yourselves that way. I think we at the end of the day, while everything else is the same, it is the intellect of the people will be resourceful. So we cannot afford not to take care of them. Right? Thank you, Dr. Smaraki, for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for such, insightful deliberation. What I draw from your talk is we need to, reduce waste, not only reduce waste, but also enhance people, which is the key to competitive advantage. Very beautifully put together by you. We always say in our classes also that it costs you nothing to recognize a person. You can always say good work or well done, and people are happy. That is how you keep your talent intact in the organization. So thank you very much, sir. It is not every day that you have such eminent guests with you. I have a personal question to Mr. David. Sir, while doing my homework on these topics, I had come across a recent interview that you had given. I read it in HR Katha, wherein you emphasized and you said that till now, Tata Training Center has already managed to host more than 50 webinars, and then you have also launched Tata Tomorrow. Just briefly give us an idea, how difficult was it to institutionalize these changes, because in general people are very aversive to change. So how difficult was it to institutionalize these kind of changes?
Okay. About the Tata Tomorrow University, the discussions actually we started about 1 year ago.
Right, sir.
We thought, when we looked at the future, how will things be? Then we took a call and we started working on it. And we thought sometime, 1st April onwards, or 1st May, we will launch. That's how we were working towards it. And then it's just that the pandemic had come and we had no option but to accelerate everything else. But otherwise, a lot of decisions and, in the Bible, there's a story of the Noah building an ark, right? So he builds an ark on dry land much before the flood came. So I think that's what we did. Much before something happened, we were building it. And when the waters came, it was able to set sail. So I think it's always important to anticipate the future and work around it and make things happen. That is as much as the Tata Tomorrow University. But the webinars, actually, I used to do 1 or 2 in a year. My colleagues also. So when we were told that work from home becomes an option, we all discussed. And even as early as March 15, we said, what should we do? How do we go about this, right? Then that was the last meeting we had on the March 16, as physically in our office. And they said, okay, if we do, we must do 2 per day. These are the timings, and what can we do? We drew out lists. Then when we wanted to get into execution mode, we found there were a lot of things which needed to tick box, right from the way we will communicate, the platform, the intricacies of the platform, how do we get people, right? And also the speakers did not know how to use the platform. So at that time it was all new, but we said we will do a few or so, we thought. But then it's just that the lockdown increased. So April, first week or so, we said, hey, we must have some test runs. So March, last week, April, first week, we did a few test runs. Some of the colleagues did it, and then we critiqued them, we gave them suggestions, we learned from it. For example, we realized most critical thing is the bandwidth, whatever we may do. Then in one place, one of the faculty wanted to play videos, and we did not know how to do it. I learned how to do that. And because I had to come to a place where bandwidth is good, and I sat down, my IT person taught me, but it was great teamwork, I would say, great teamwork. And for example, once we did it, people also had a request that we want to see the recordings. Now we cannot do the recordings with all the noise and extra talk. It has to be crisp. So one colleague, actually, I can call out his name, is Sanjay Nayak. I think he's also on this webinar. He had the difficulty of his bandwidth. He used to download about 850 megabytes of data, edit it, and upload it again. So now, thankfully, about 50 recordings uploaded. We've done our 60th webinar this morning, and we've had more than about 36,000 Tata employees visit. Some of them have visited many, have listened to many of them, and about 13,000 unique visitors are there. So it's been very encouraging, but I think the most important winner is the learner who's got new insights on various aspects. So it's possible. And I think we are quite good. We can do this and more now. And that is
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
online courses. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Let us now move on with few questions that our audience have put forward for our panelists. One question I can see here for Mr. Panda. The question is, should be the workforce strategies for small and medium scale industries post-COVID? It is from Dr. Anuj.
Yeah, Dr. Anuj, I think the strategy will be a little different than whatever the large scale organizations are. I think what is important is how we can have a very effective outsourcing model. That is something will be the need of the hour. And outsourcing model means you need to take people from established outsourcing companies so that those guys are working with other organizations also. So the workforce is scalable. So whenever you want to reduce also, those guys are not losing their job, but the outsourced agency can replace them in any other organization, because always there will be a demand supply gap will be always there. Second is there a lot of new sectors are emerging. Say health, hygiene, a lot of things will emerge. So some of the people can be reskilled by the outsourcing agency. So the outsourcing agency, if they're working on both in attracting, sourcing, and also retraining, those guys will be more successful today and they will have more businesses. So I think that is one part. The second part is, thankfully the government is coming out with a lot of simplification of the labor laws and various things. So obviously you can always have a culture wherein people are also getting opportunity, but it is also important that give opportunity to the people who are not getting the opportunity. Their commitment will be very, very high, and they will be engaged with the organization, and their productivity is also very high. The third thing also you need to also look at that the shifting pattern, the flexible pattern. Can you have any authority, educational institution, like you asked one of the questions related to this educational institution, or maybe with you can have a shifting, because social distancing is a new normal. You cannot have more people. So if you want to intact the productivity level, obviously you will have to have a very flexible system, and employees will be very happy. Let me tell you, if you are giving opportunity to people and learning opportunity, contribution, they are getting the return to the effort, they will be very happy to engage with the employer. And that is, I think, is going to definitely help the employee also, as an organization also. It is a win-win for both the,
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. The next question is to Mr. Babu. In what manner private unaided colleges will see towards online education? Will it not hamper the normal staff capacity and their workings? From Dr. Anuj.
Okay, now this is a little alien to me, but I think the way to do is that relook the entire your operating and your business model once again. We have the current crisis where a lot of these restaurants have been closed down, but Swiggy is still doing some business with them. So that's the way, perhaps, make it lean and make it smaller units. So you'll have to look at it, your business, considering the dynamics of your business, and maybe you'll have to remodel your business model in whichever way. You shouldn't be just leaving it open and sustain all the costs and liabilities, wait for the good days. You'll have to be very agile in making changes to your very business and your operating models.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. Another question we have here is for Mr. David. It says, what are the obligations company have to their employees?
Yeah, I think that's a very broad-based question. I think it's a reciprocity. First and foremost, organization wants something from the employee, which he does, and the company also gives whatever they can, and it depends on the relative competitiveness. I've worked in different sectors. Some sectors, where the margins are low, they can afford only that much, right? Some sectors, like the oil and gas sectors, are very different, right? And then you look at private equity investments, it's very difficult. So wherever the individual value add is high, right, there, the company also is obligated. They say, how is it? I should not lose him. I give you the example how we retain some key people and also got a stock option so that we retain our competitive position. I think both sides it is there. Wherever it becomes a little bit of coercive or extractive kind of a thing, then people don't stay. They will for a while, but then move on. So that's what I would say.
Thank you, sir. Now that we're running late of our schedule, so we won't be able to take any more questions. I would try and follow up later. I would just take few minutes just to mention my takeaway from this session. Dr. David, Dr. Panda, and Dr. T.S. Babu, very beautifully in their talks have given their total picture of all the facets of HR. And I believe as now the teams around the world are moving their work to more remote platforms, the companies will need to focus on the human element at least as much as they talk about the technology these days. And almost half of their employees to work from home. They're also scaling up their cleanliness protocol, and the HR leaders are also waking up to the fact that when people don't feel safe, supported, or emotionally secure, they simply cannot do their jobs. That is what was emphasized by all the three speakers also. I would rather leave the audience with a question to introspect upon, rather giving ending to it. That is this a business transformation disguised as a pandemic? You may just give a thought about it. Thank you. It was indeed a great learning experience for me, and must be true for everyone else who attended the program. I thank the panelists for sharing their views and their opinions and giving us a very holistic idea of all the facets of HR. Your deliberations were particularly appropriate in this time, considering the new initiatives for expanding growth. I am sure our audience is intrigued by all the participants for their support. I am indeed overwhelmed with gratitude. Nobody actually generally thanks the stage actors, the IT team. I would like to thank all the people, all the IT team who have helped us, organizing this session beautifully and successfully. Thanks again for joining with us today. I wish you good health, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye. We will
Thank
also,
you very much.
thank you. We will also share the feedback link to all the participants soon. Thank you for joining with us.
I must thank
you.
all the panelists.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.